I did a startup when I was 22. I did a startup when I was 29. I did a startup when I was like 35. And now I'm in my 40s and I'm doing a startup again, right? And I'll tell you that every time is a great time to do a startup.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Founders Journey series. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. I'm joined by my guest today, Rohit Vashisht, who's based in New Jersey. He's the co-founder and CEO at Whiz.ai. Now, this is actually part two of our discussion. Go back and listen to part one, where we heard more about the platform itself, a conversational AI platform meant to connect business users with enterprise data, insights, and workflows, particularly in the life science space. Welcome back, Rohit. I'm excited to hear more about your journey now, how you actually did this.
Excited to be back.
Yeah, so you began, Whiz was started in 2017, so about 4 years now it's been in. And take me even before then, because you mentioned you were already in this space itself. How did you get started in the technology space?
Yeah, I'm an engineer by education, and I started my career in software back in 2000. And those were heydays of software, right? It's just amazing, like how internet was coming to the fore and the world was changing. And for me, it was from day one, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to build software products, right? So my very first job that I picked was with a startup, and that startup happened to be building a business intelligence product from the scratch. So that's how I started. And actually, that's where I met my current co-founder, which was about 20 years ago, and we know each other very well. Um, and we built, at that time, industry's first business intelligence product where you could actually change numbers and see its impact. So back in 2000, most of those products were just read-only, and you could only run reports. In that product, you could actually change, like, hey, if I change my pricing by 5%, what will happen to my margins or overall business or the deal sizes and all that kind of stuff, right? It was fascinating.
Like right from the beginning,
Yeah,
you were just like in business analytics, and so that's just you live and breathe it right from the beginning.
absolutely. And we built that product from bottoms up, from the scratch. So we knew the details, the nuts and bolts of how it is done. And then I did that for about 6, 7 years on the tech side. Then I switched gears and I did sales and marketing in between. I did a startup, a fintech startup, but I did sales, enterprise sales, and that was a fascinating experience. How do you sell a product like this to Fortune 500 companies, right? So yeah, so I did that. So spent about 12 years in the industry and in BI industry. Then I started a company which I ran very successfului, and that company got acquired in 2016. 2017, I started
That's
with
Swerve.
Swerve. Yes, so
Swerve.
it's social verb Swerve. So we basically built a marketing platform, or you can say influencer marketing platform. So that was also like we were ahead of our times. I don't think we knew when we started. People were not even talking about influencer marketing, but that's the kind of marketplace we built, and that did pretty well.
Wow. So, and now Swerve, that was your then second or first or second company that you had founded?
So that was actually my third company that I
Third.
founded. Uh,
Okay.
I started a company right after my college, and at that time I was in India, and we were trying to build eBay for India back in 1999. I was like 22 at that time, I guess. So now you know my age. Um, but it was a fascinating journey. I mean, so that didn't work out for many reasons, and I came here. Then I started a fintech company in 2007, 8. The timing was super bad, and then Swerve, and then now Viz, which is fourth.
Wow. Obviously, over this time, there's a lot of lessons learned of being able to grow a
Sure.
company and then even being acquired and now on to your next one. When it comes to, let's start at the beginning, maybe to get it be started, you need money, founding dollars. With Swerve, did you raise money? Did you bootstrap it?
Yeah, we raised money at Swerve. So I think so I'm gonna say, going back to your point, right? Like there are a lot of scar marks, when you do like these many startups and you learn, right? So one of the questions that a lot of founders or entrepreneurs, they think, what is the right time to start a business? Is it like early in your career, middle of the career, later in your career, that kind of stuff, right? I did a startup when I was 22. I did a startup when I was 29. I did a startup when I was like 35. And now I'm in my 40s and I'm doing a startup again, right? And I'll tell you that every time is a great time to do a startup. It Every time, I'm gonna say, it doesn't matter where you are in that stage. There are some pluses, there are some minuses. When I was 22, I did not have as many responsibilities. I could do whatever I could. I could work like 24 hours a day, that kind of stuff. But hey, at the same time, I lacked experience. I didn't have any network and all that kind of stuff. Fast forward when a few years, and when I started Swerve, I had spent about 20, 13 years in the industry. I had a network. I knew what I was doing. And that's the reason I would say, the very first money that came in, that was angel money, but that was all my professional network, right? So that got us started. And then obviously we went on to raise VC money and all that kind of stuff. That's a different thing. But yeah, I'm going to see, all my startups have been fortunately funded or funded by institutional investors. Yeah.
I love that your answer though of every time, all the time is a good time to start a startup. It's just, it's you have a balance of there's pros and cons to wherever you are, whatever stage. I think that can be hopefully heartwarming for some folks, no matter what, if they're early or they're later in their life and they're like, should I start one? Sure.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter. I'm going to say, every time is a good time to build a company, to start a company.
For Whiz, you also did raise rounds. What would you say is one of the biggest lessons learned when seeking funding that you can share, or even a mistake one could make to try to and try to avoid that?
Yeah, I'm going to say, look, fundraising is sexy. Fundraising is indication of success to many, and that's why a lot of founders, they basically fall for it. They want to raise money. And by the way, so don't get me wrong, you need money to build a business, and you need that longevity. But obviously, you got to be very clear as a founder what kind of company you're building, right? And fundraising is then a byproduct of that. Like for me, it was always that I wanted to build a product company, and I wanted to build a very large business and a growth business. And to build a business like that, you need funding, because the money does not come in the beginning. It's very hard to bootstrap. Some people have done it and done it beautifully. More power to them. But 99.9% of the people, they need money, and that's the bucket that I am in. On the other hand, I would say, if you're doing like let's say a lifestyle business, you don't want to raise money, and you should not even worry about raising money, right? How to raise money? I'm going to say, look, there is. Some people will say there is no method to this madness. I'm actually finding some method to this madness. I think in my mind, I'm going to say, to raise money, the number one thing is that you have to have a network. If you don't have your own network, then you need to borrow that network. You need to find people who have that network, who can actually get you in. The articles, the news about funding, this company got funding, that company got funding, it is very misleading. And I was in that bucket like probably 10 years ago when I started Swerve, especially. I thought like, everybody's getting funded, and I'm going to start a business and I will get funded. Oh my God. I mean, it took me some time to figure that out, right? For one company that gets funding, probably there are 10 or maybe even 100 who are not getting that funding, right? So the other side is actually stark, right? And a lot of the founders, they are basically in that 99, and they're frustrated, and they keep thinking like, why am I not able to raise funding? It is hard. People, it is hard, right? So my number one thing, if you want to be in that business and you want to raise VC funding, you need to find a way to get into that network. Otherwise, it is very, very hard.
Funding is one piece, critical piece, as you especially understanding, all right, am I building a product company that needs to have that money to start at the beginning? But then the next piece is customers, clients. Once you built the product itself, you've actually mentioned earlier that you heavily had a focus and had experience in enterprise. And obviously that naturally led to where you've now focused with Whiz. What would you say when it comes to enterprise marketing and sales and connecting, making those deals, a lesson learned of how do you make those happen? Because they're just a different beast than other types of sales.
Sure, absolutely. And before I answer that question, in my mind, and this is what I tell people, there are three main things in a business, and you're building a business, and especially a product business, right? One is product, which I think is the most easiest part of the company building process. Generally, people are smart, like, we have our ideas, we can put together teams, we can build product. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It is hard to build a good product, but of the three things, it's probably the easiest. The second The harder part, or the second hardest part, is fundraising. And we all know for obvious reasons. The hardest part in a business is traction, is customers. And by the way, if you figure out the hardest part, other two are automatically taken care of. You will get funding, and your product will also get there, because now you have customers. They will put you on that path. They will give you the requirements and all that kind of stuff, right? So customer traction is, or in consumer world, it could be like user traction, user engagement, whatever that is the hardest part in a company, right? In company building. Enterprise software sales, I'm going to say, it depends who you want to sell to, whether it is SMB, whether it is, large enterprises. I think the game is slightly different. The tactics and the strategy is slightly different. I have most of my entrepreneurial life sold to large companies, so I understand that space decently well now. And it is all about having the right connects early on, the right connects who can actually give you that. Even when I started Whiz, I told my co-founder, we're not going to write a single line of code until I find a beta customer. We did that. And that was my learning from a previous startup, where we started building first and then we started looking for clients. In this case, I wanted to do the other way around. So the idea was very clear. The problem was very clear, what we were solving. We didn't have a product. But then I looked into my network, and I found a friend of a friend who was a CEO of a company, and he was running a manufacturing company, ex-McKinsey, very data-driven person. And he's like, yep, I love it. I want information at my fingertips. And I'm like, okay, so, beta customer, we're not going to charge you anything. All we want from you is your data, your time, so that you give us feedback, and you should use our product. And he's like, yeah, I commit to it. 6 months we did that. And that's how we built our MVP with them. And they became our paying client, the very first paying client. And that's when the journey starts, right? Once you have your first customer, now you have a testimonial. Now you can actually start to pitch, and you can go to like second and third and fourth. That's how the journey goes.
It's having that first customer that kicks everything else off.
Absolutely.
And makes it happen. But the critical step is you actually had the network. You had the connections already to reach out. What would you say to a founder who may not have connections yet in the enterprise world, but that's where their product is focused? Should that be one of the first hires? Is a salesperson with the network? Should they themselves just spend time building that network? What would you be recommending?
No, I will never suggest any entrepreneur to hire a salesperson before they have customers, a few customers. This is entrepreneur's job. I would say, if you are the CEO, even if you're not a CEO, if you're a founder, and you could be a solo founder, you could be a co-founder, one of the founder has to carry the bag. Because, so one of the myths, right? Like, oh, let's get a salesperson and salesperson will sell. But really, I mean, so when you're early on in your company's journey and you don't have the product fully baked, you don't know yet like how this will come together, salespeople are ineffective. Salespeople are effective when you have figured out those things. You can actually train them. You can give them a pitch. You can tell them this is case studies, and then they will go and they will do a great job. Early on, you are the best salesperson because you can sit in a meeting and you can project, oh yeah, even though I don't have it in my product, but I can solve it. Yes, this is how my product will come together. I did that. I mean, so, to kid you not, I mean, it's 3 years ago, we were in a very competitive sales cycle with a pharma company, and 90% of the product was not there. But we sitting in that meeting, I could project and I could think like, this is how my product can do, excuse me. And we were building like some of those things overnight, whether those are screens or mock-ups or something, but no sales rep will do that. They will not understand that. But so you have to sell on your own. Now, in this case, I had some network. I went through my network, but the same thing. I mean, so if you don't have a network, go build a network. That's the thing that you have to do. That's hustle. Yeah.
So one thing is funding. Another piece, as you said, actually the hardest piece is getting traction, getting customers.
Absolutely.
Then you have to actually have the team to execute the vision.
Totally.
You're at, but I think you said 65 folks today at the team. Thinking back, what was one of the earlier hires, one of the most crucial hires that you made?
Sure. Engineers. So we were building. So our whole product is AI product, and AI talent is very scarce and very expensive, very hard to find. And once we found our beta customer, now the game was on. Now like they're giving us requirements and all, we want to build this. And our initial hires were all engineers, like, and obviously, I mean, so, it's not like we got 60 people from day one. We started with like 2 people and then 4 people and then 8 people. But yeah, it's only when we got like 2 or 3 customers and now we had the case studies and success stories and we knew what our pitch was. That's when we started hiring sales and marketing people. And sales and marketing is expensive. I mean, engineering is also very expensive. But engineering comes in a very different bucket where that this is what I'm doing, this is my R&D expense. Sales and marketing is a very, very different expense, and it can rack up very quickly. So you need to be very careful when you invest in that.
When it comes to sales and marketing, and being able to invest in that, what are some lessons learned that you've had over the years of the balance there that's required?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so, sales, a lot of lessons, but some of them, right? Like one, which I'm already talking about, the timing is very critical, very crucial. You need to know when you're ready to hire a salesperson. It's very, easy to say, let me get a salesperson and certainly I will get like 5 customers. It does not happen, right? So the timing is very important. Second, I'll tell you, I think the hardest hire in any company is a sales hire. The easiest hire in any company is an engineering hire, because for an engineer, you already know the framework. Like, okay, I need a Java developer and I know the questions. I know what I will grill that person on. That person writes good code. You know that this is a person, and day one, person gets on the job. Salespeople are totally different. It's very, very difficult to find the right sales hire, right, or salesperson. And I can't even tell you how many mistakes I have done in my life. And unfortunately, that is a very expensive mistake that founders do. Like if you get a salesperson on, it'll take you at least 3 to 6 months to figure out whether you hired the right person. And you lose time, you lose money in that. So be very careful and tap into your network. If you know like VP of sales or people who have done sales before, tap into them to learn like how to hire a salesperson. It's very important.
You said you have to be careful on the timing. How do you know when? When is the right time?
When you have successful customers, 1 or 2. When you have a case study in place, they are referenceable customer, and you have proven your value proposition. Those are the things, because now you have the building blocks which somebody can take and run with and build on it. Without that, your salespeople will not be effective.
That makes a lot of sense. Obviously, building a technology product that AI, and you're in some ways trying to lead the charge in new spaces. Looking back the last 4 years, if there was one thing you could tell yourself 4 years ago that you know now, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Focus on our domain very early. We spent first 2 years building like journal product, and it's only like once we got our very large customer, and we realized that, hey, look how important the domain is here. I would have done that probably from day one.
So you weren't life science day one?
Nope. First year and a half we were not. Actually, in 2019 we completely focused on life sciences. So all our traction in life sciences is only in the last 24 months, and it's been an amazing journey since.
Wow. And so that would be the one thing. It's like just start from the beginning with that.
Absolutely. I mean, so I would have found the customer in life sciences, like if we knew. But again, hindsight 2020. I mean, so look, it's building a company is a decade long or even longer process. That's how we all learn and adapt.
Yeah, it takes time. Speaking of learning, are there any books, audiobooks, podcasts that you have found helpful and would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a big fan of A16Z and Andreessen Horowitz, their podcast series. I think that's done very well, and topics and all. I'm a big fan of those. I used to listen to HBR, IdeaCast or podcast, not so much, but that used to be fun. Nowadays, I just pick like any topic that is of interest to me, whether it is new technology like AI, ML, what is happening there, industry. I'm very excited about quantum computing. Like, if it comes, what can it do to AI and how it'll, get to the next level. So very interested in that. Books, I'm pretty old school, but my best book, I think the entrepreneurial book that I read was during my Swerve days, and I still go back to that. It's a hard thing about hard things, from Ben Horowitz. I think that's probably for founders. That's highly recommended. If you have not read that book, I would suggest. I think you all will kind of relate to it and kind of take stories from it. We live those stories every day. Yeah, and Zero to One is another one of my favorite books, on entrepreneurship. But my all-time favorite book, which I've been reading for the last 20 years and still go back to, is like What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School by I think Mark. That's a fascinating read. So yeah, but
Okay.
yeah,
I appreciate those
cool.
those helpful ones. One of the things
Sure.
I'm always curious also as a leader is how you spend your time, because every time is one thing we can't get more of. So in a typical day, when you wake up, what does a day look like for you?
Chaotic. you know, I would say, like just like any other founder or CEO, my calendar is generally booked from 8 a.m. to whatever, 5 or 6 p.m. solid. But, off late, I started figuring out that like as the team grew, like there were more demands on my time and people will just find any open slot and get it. So what I do nowadays is I set aside at least 3 hours for myself. So those are booked on my calendar, and I try not to basically give that time away to other people. So I'm very stingy on that. Where I'm spending my time. But again, I'm going to say the things keep changing as the business grows. So there was a time when I was very focused on product and product management, and I would spend a lot of my time on those activities. Nowadays, most of my time goes on sales, marketing, analyst relationship, partners, like more like commercial side of the business. And my co-founder is basically taking care of the product and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, for me, the best time is those 2 or 3 hours where I can do strategic thinking. I can actually catch up on things, where I'm behind. It's very important. Like as the company grows, as your business kind of find its feet, it's very important that person at the top has to have that kind of vision so that you can keep the ship moving in the right direction.
Last question for you, Rohit. Looking forward, future tech predictions in this space in the near term, next year or two, and long term, 5, 10 years. What can you share?
I think enterprise will look very different in the next 10 years. The AI thing has just started. What we are doing, what we call it like intelligent automation. And we talked about it in the previous podcast, right? How we are bringing that, we are eliminating that manual process and high-end knowledge work kind of process, and AI is doing it. The kind of agility it is bringing to the business, the cost savings it is bringing to the business is unparalleled. So it's only going to accelerate. I think from my vantage point, the industry that we sit in, business intelligence industry, it is like $500 billion industry. We think in the next 5 years, it's going to completely disrupt, so it's a big, big opportunity. And I won't be surprised. AI in my mind is just like internet or software that touched everything. It's going to touch everything, and it is already touching everything. So the future of work and future of enterprise is very, very different. It's fast, it's automated, it's agile. That's how I think about it.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight and the journey that you've been on. For those that want to learn more, go back and listen to part 1, where we were able to dive a little bit deeper into the platform itself. And you can also go to Whiz.ai to learn more about their platform. Thanks again for your time, Rohit. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.